Hi, real progressives. This is Rocco Million. It is 6:04. I haven't been able to sleep a wink. And a ton of pain and just don't feel good. So, I was mad because I can't get to the VA. So I figured what better way to get back at the government than to, educate the public with economic truth so that we could unite in solidarity for the public purpose. That's the best way I could think of. So I got the Be Live app, and I want to learn how to use it, and so I can become a little bit more technically proficient. I just did one a while ago, and it didn't even show up. So I need to know if this is showing up, but I think it is. So we're just going to go on as if it is. If you guys could comment, if you hear me, it would help. But anyway, yeah, I want to start off each week now with a little different format. I'm going to be starting it with an overview of our operational reality, MMT, age, so that everyone understands some of my terminology, what I mean by it, and it'll help the information flow better, and I think it'll help people to understand and learn better. So good morning. Yeah, cool. All right, people could see me. So yeah, I think it'll help people learn the information better, and that's ultimately my main goal. Is about getting this message out to empower the people collectively to unite in solidarity, to destroy the lies and the scare tactics of the ruling class that are used to keep us divided. That's what this information is about. So I'm going to be talking about the weekly, the issues of the week, political issues of the week that I see on MSM and, the mainstream media and on social media and stuff. And I'm going to be critiquing that and talking about that, but in the context of our economic reality, the context of our economic truth. MMT, because all problems in our society start are rooted in economics, and they have their solutions in macroeconomics. So, MMT is the revolutionary vehicle we've all been waiting for because it unites all sides for the public purpose using simple logic and scientific fact. It's a very, very powerful tool. So I'd like to start this off with, talking about let me see, about, our operational reality, MMT. Let me see. So start off talking about our constitutional reality. All right. The fact of the matter is, and this is a simple scientific fact that's well documented, anybody can look it up. The fact of the matter is, we are guaranteed a government for, of, and by the people for the general welfare of society. That's socially owned government for the public purpose, for the general welfare of society. This is a fact, if you look up the you, our government is mandated to, promote the general welfare of society, to promote domestic tranquility, to common defense thereof, of all of it. So, and then it even goes a step further. Article clearly mandates Congress mint and tax to provide for the general welfare of society. So that's right there, and the general welfare is all through the Constitution. So that's government's general welfare, the public purpose. A socially owned government is supposed to work for the public purpose and let the individual make what they can from the balanced economy that will create. A socially owned government is never supposed to work for the individual and force society to make do with the scraps. That's fascism. All right. So these are operational facts, constitutional facts. Article 1, Section 8 mandates Congress mint and tax to provide for the general welfare of society. This means government doesn't need money. Government never needs to find money. Government doesn't need profit. It doesn't need even revenue to spend and operate. That's the whole point. Government needs real resources like infrastructure, military, sanitation systems, legal systems, healthcare, education. It needs all these real resources and more to satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare of society. But how does government provision itself with those real resources? Well, it uses taxation and spending. It's a social construct designed to drive real resources from us in the private sector to the public sector for the public purpose, for the general welfare of society. That's how government provisions society. All right, government taxation creates unemployment. People are willing then to sell their goods and labor for dollars to survive. Now government can provision society with military and infrastructure and legal systems and all of the real resources it needs using paid employment. That's it. That's the whole thing. So government taxation creates unemployment, and only federal spending can satisfy that condition with paid employment, ultimately. Okay, so it would be sadistic for government to, create and target unemployment and not spend the required dollars into existence to satisfy that condition with unemployment. I mean, with paid employment. That would be sadistic. That's the whole thing, especially when you consider that our communities are crumbling, starved of human resources, starved of infrastructure resources. And we have millions of people unemployed, millions more underemployed as a result. That's obscene. That's untapped productive capacity. That's artificial scarcity that kills more than drugs and guns combined. Okay, that's crazy. Our government, can always buy up all unemployment with a federally guaranteed living wage job for every single person who wants one, and maximize that untapped productive capacity, and raise everybody's standard of living without raising taxes or making cuts. We could balance the economy in a sustainable green way that allows every single person to derive good benefit. Okay, so this is government's job, the public purpose. Okay, the money part of the equation doesn't matter. That's always infinite for our federal government. All that matters is we have enough real resources available to buy with that money. All right, remember, we make all dollars at will by congressional decree. So government can always buy anything for selling dollars. Government can always pay all debts denominated in dollars because government makes all dollars at will by congressional decree from thin air. That's the thing. That's the whole point. This is how government provisions society. So yeah, government can always buy up all unemployment, balance the economy. All right, now we're gonna look at what capitalism is. Capitalism, on the other hand, only exists in the private sector, and only to the extent that our socially owned government allows. All right, our socially owned government owns the private sector completely, with its ability to impose tax and be the monopoly issuer of the only tax credit, dollars. All right, that means government owns the private sector completely. Nobody even owns truly owns property in America. We all rent. We all pay tax, just like communist China. All right. The only free market is the black market. Even the dollars in your pocket belong to the government, and they're subject to recall taxation at any time per the Constitution. That's the whole point. Government is the supreme authority per the Constitution. Okay, government forced us to stop living off the land and start working for the general welfare of society per the Constitution. All right, taxation creates unemployment. And so the capitalism, it only exists in the private sector, and profits is never supposed to be put over the general welfare of society. Our government never needs profit or even revenue to operate. So we're going to look at all the ways, all the different areas where our government does put profit over the general welfare of society and the consequences of that. And we'll go through it one by one. And the results are, they're pretty clear to see. So let's look at what happens when government works for the profits of the 1% at society's expense. We get the neoliberal era starting in the 70s when both Democrats and Republicans teamed up to kill the full employment policies of the New Deal. Right? This ushered in the neoliberal era. And both parties targeted unemployment ever since. And, so both parties have intentionally created massive scale systemic poverty ever since. All right. And this is something we have to understand. Our government keeps a buffer of unemployed people for capital to wage war on labor with. All right. This puts downward pressure on all labor wages and working conditions. All right. Now the boss don't have to give you a job. They have millions of people unemployed, so desperate they'll do your job cheaper than you. All right. They'll do your job for starvation wages. So it puts downward pressure on all working wages and working conditions. This is class warfare. It's wage suppression. Fascism. Both parties been doing it from the 70s. And this is exactly why our wages have been stagnant from the 70s, while corporate profits and productivity and cost of living are at record highs. All right, because our government is engaged in wage suppression, class warfare. Our government targets unemployment and keeps a buffer stock of unemployed for capital to wage war on labor with. That drives all wages down and working conditions down. And so that's a real clear way to see our government's fascism right there. Also, just, our government, like I said, our government is by it targeting unemployment, that's intentional, massive scale, systemic poverty throughout America at a time when our communities are crumbling, starved of human resources, starved of infrastructure resources. That's untapped productive capacity. It's artificial scarcity that kills just like bullets. And so this clearly shows, what happens when our government works for the profits of the 1% at our society's expense. All right. We could see that with unemployment, we end up with a dog-eat-dog world. We end up with people at the bottom who are always in pointless, needless pain, suffering and dying, systemic poverty. All right, that's what happens when we target unemployment. And so if government creates unemployment, it's government's responsibility. If government creates unemployment so it could provision the general welfare with real resources using paid employment, then it would be fascist for a socially owned government to intentionally target unemployment, which creates systemic poverty throughout America. And it gets worse when you understand the intentionally target unemployment, and keep millions poor. Yet our communities are crumbling, starved for human resources and infrastructure. This is work we need done. All right, but this is work that we need done for civil society. Work like infrastructure, so that Americans can have clean water. All right, that kind of work. It's absolutely imperative. And yet the private sector will not do this work because there's no profit in it, whatever the reason. All right, this is work that needs done and won't get done. And we got millions of people unemployed who want to work. All right, that's untapped productive capacity. It's artificial scarcity that kills more than guns and drugs combined. All for the profits of the 1% at everybody else's expense. They'll give the buffer stock of unemployed to capital to wage war on labor, puts downward pressure on all working conditions and labor wages. And this ends up turning into, like I said, if your wages have been stagnant from the 70s, while productivity and cost of living have been going up from the 70s, then that means that our purchasing power in the 99% has dramatically decreased. Okay, and the majority now doesn't have disposable income to buy production and survive. So it forces us into copious amounts of private credit just to consume production and survive. All right, this is a horrible way to live. You need credit cards for, eggs and milk. We get all this private debt on us all. This is the neoliberal way: privatize the public space and deregulate everything. Starve the 99% of public spending to force us all into private credit and just to consume production and survive. And because private credit always dries up, that leads to booms, busts, and bailouts that only help the rich. Our government has to move back into a huge deficit position anyway to help the rich, to bail out the rich. So, it's inefficient, inhumane, it's fascism. All right. Our government should deficit enough up front from the beginning, up front, and distribute that spending to balance the economy by targeting true full employment with a federally guaranteed living wage job for every single person who wants one. Our government can always do that. We could maximize our productive capacity to meet everybody's base needs, to raise everybody's standard of living without raising taxes, without making cuts. Again, after all, public debt for society and a higher standard of living is the entire point of government and dollars to begin with. All right, so this is the thing. Our socially owned government should definitely maximize our productive capacity and balance our economy in a green, sustainable way so that every single person can derive good benefit. All right, that's the only way our government can satisfy its constitutional mandate to the general welfare. All right, and so we see how when government puts profit over the general welfare when it comes to employment and unemployment, we see major consequences throughout our economy. Next, we're going to look at when government puts profit over the general welfare in regards to our justice system, legal system. We end up with for-profit drug wars, for-profit vice wars, policing for profit, for-profit prisons. We end up with police terror. That's the result of all this, and what it does is it radicalizes people. This is not how you get civil society. We end up with police, criminalizing nature and peaceful behavior. We end up with cops legally raping, robbing, and killing people over evil flowers, all in the name of corporate profits. So, and that's a fact. If a cop thinks you have a flower in you, they can take you to the hospital and have you medically raped for hours. It's happened to people. All right. It's legal. If a cop wants to use civil asset forfeiture laws, they can take your house, they can seize your bank account, they can take your stuff without even charging you with a crime, so they can legally rob you. Okay, and cops kill people on weed warrants all the time, so cops legally rob, rape, and kill people over evil flowers all the time, all in the name of corporate profits. Talk about Sharia law, guys. All right, these are the consequences of our government working for the profits of the 1% at everyone else's expense. I mean, our government is mandated to mint tax for the general welfare of society. So it should fully fund all police departments. All right. Then they don't have to engage in policing for profit to stay operational. Then they don't got to become terrorists and use civil asset forfeiture laws and the drug war to rob people and stay operational, to rape and plunder. That's the thing. So that's why I say all problems in our society have their roots in economics, and they have their macroeconomic solutions. That's that for this. For when it fascism for our government to work for the profits of the 1% at everyone else's expense, and that's exactly what we see with our for-profit justice system today. All right, with the for-profit drug war and all of that, um, you know. You feed it gunpowder every day,